Colleen.
Hey, Akhilesh, how are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
All right. So firstly, can you tell us how the transition worked for you while you were foraying into the world of mixed martial arts?
Oh, when I first started fighting MMA?
Yes.
Yeah, so I got into MMA from a traditional martial arts background. I had done karate growing up, and then I was competitive in Taekwondo through college. So it was after college that I transitioned into MMA. I first started doing Sancho, actually, because I thought that would be a good transition point from Taekwondo to MMA, and then got into Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, and, full-on MMA training.
Right. Now, ever since you moved to combat submission wrestling, you've found great success. So can you tell us how the journey has been for you in the past couple of years, where you have fought for some of the biggest promotions and have now come to Bellator MMA?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I've had the opportunity to fight for all the promotions I have and travel all over the world doing so. It's actually one of the things I love about fighting. I've fought in India 3 times, I've fought in China, I've fought in Japan, I've fought in Mexico, I've fought all over the U.S. I fought for Strikeforce, did the Ultimate Fighter, was in Invicta, and Bellator is a promotion that I as a fan have really enjoyed for years. I think they run great shows. I think they have great talent, so I'm super excited to be a part of it. And I train at CMMA, California Mixed Martial Arts, in Los Angeles.
Right, and this will also be a promotional debut for Bellator MMA. Now you're also on one of the most highly anticipated cards of the year. So what are your thoughts about signing up with the promotion at this stage of your career?
I think the timing's great, and I couldn't be happier to be on this event. Right, like you said, this is one of the biggest shows that Bellator's ever put on. So to be able to make my debut on this card is huge. It's my opportunity to go out there and make a statement.
Right, and we also previously fought at 125 and then jumped to 135. So what, according to you, is the ideal weight class for you, where you feel you can put on the best performance? And how do you think 125 pounds is different from 135 for yourself?
I feel, decently tall and strong at 135, but at 125 at flyweight, I feel like just a physical force to be reckoned with. I feel very, very strong, very physically dominant. I feel like I can really impose myself on my opponents at that weight. And I've done either, just depending on what opportunities were presented to me, But my whole career, I've just taken whatever fights I could get, wherever they were, whatever weight they were at. So to be able to still fight for Bellator and do so at 125 is perfect. I'm more than happy to be in this situation.
All right. Now going into your fight with Rebecca, she lost the last fight where McFarlane used her effective Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and grappling to get the upper hand. Now, do you think that is an area that would give you the advantage as well?
I do think I have that advantage with her. However, she is out of the fight due to injury. So she's no longer my opponent, and Bellator is right now at this moment looking for a replacement.
Oh, all right. So my next question was going to be, how much research do you do before a fight on your opponent? And along those lines, I wanted to ask about your thoughts on Rebecca. But how much of research do you actually put in on your opponent before a fight, and how does this change? Just with 10 days to go, how does this change getting a new opponent in? Would that be difficult for you just because of getting to know your opponent, their strengths and weaknesses? How does that alter your game plan?
Yeah, I definitely do as much research as I can. Whatever fight footage there is on my opponent, I'll watch it. I'll watch it with my coach. We'll discuss strategy and how it affects my game plan. But it's also ultimately I would step in the cage, not even know who I was going to fight, and be okay with that. I've taken so many fights on short notice where you have a week or two, so you don't have time to work an entire fight camp around strategy for a particular person. you need to be able to just go in there and fight your fight and adapt to what's happening. And I think I have, I've had enough experience and time in the cage that I can do that. I have, a decent fight IQ, and whatever happens in the cage, I can adjust to that and still make the fight my fight. So, right now I don't know who I'm fighting. As soon as I find out who it is, obviously, I'll look them up. I'll do the research on them. I'll be as informed as I can be going into it. But, I'm not worried about not having, a whole camp to know who I'm fighting. I've done that. I've not had that so many times that I'm perfectly okay with that.
Right. And how has your training camp been, in the past couple of months, ever since you signed for Bellator MMA? Since you had a specific opponent in mind, who you're going to fight in January. How was the entire training camp for you?
Camp's actually been really great. I've been very happy with my progression. It's a camp where I feel like some fight camps you go in and you just grind hard, you try and get in shape and you go fight. But I feel like I've developed a lot as a fighter during this camp, and just a lot of things that I've been working on are there, they're happening, and I'm doing what my coach has strategized for me, and camp's been great. My conditioning feels great. At this point, it's a week and a half out, and you get to that point where you're like, you just want to go do it. You've been putting in the hard work and you're just ready to go get in the cage. So I'm starting to get there.
All right, fantastic. Now, the 125-pound division has some big names, and recently Bellator MMA also announced the inaugural title fight in the featherweight division. Now, being a veteran in the sport, what are your thoughts on the evolution of women's MMA, and also on Bellator possibly adding a flyweight title in the near future?
Yeah, the women's position in the sport has evolved so much since I first started fighting. I mean, when I first started fighting, the Dana White's position in the UFC was that I'll never have women fight. It's never going to happen. And then I remember being at the first female UFC fight, watching Carmouche and Rousey fight, and honestly crying because I was so just happy that we had gotten to this point in the sport. And to see where it comes to now, Bellator has done a great job of promoting women, and I think the fact that they're creating the featherweight title and will create a flyweight title speaks to the fact that they're taking women's MMA seriously and are serious about pushing those divisions.
Right. And you just told me that you were just gonna, you were just taking fights as and when they were available, either at 125 or 135. So, do you see yourself competing in the flyweight division for the foreseeable future, or do you expect to keep moving up and down weight classes, depending upon what plans Bellator has for different divisions?
So right now, Bellator just has flyweight, so I will certainly stay at flyweight and fight for Bellator there. But hey, if they make a bantamweight division, I'd go for making a 2-belt run.
Right. All right. And also, as you previously said, you fought in India before. So, what are your thoughts on the country and about your experience when you were in India?
It was really interesting to fight in India. I fought on the second ever Super Fight League card, and at that point, most people in India didn't know MMA. The sport was very new to the country.
Right.
The people watching it they weren't experienced fans. They were just kind of, hey, let's go see what this thing is. Like, I had a number of reporters talk to me and not think that it was real, think that it was like pro wrestling. And they weren't being insulting or anything. They just genuinely didn't know. They didn't know MMA. And the first card that I fought on, there was a Bollywood show done in conjunction with the fights to kind of bring people in and give them something they're used to before the fights. So, and the crowd was really quiet. I remember the first time I fought over there, they just weren't sure. They weren't sure what they were watching. And then by the third time I fought over there, it felt much different. You could tell people knew the sport more. You just saw the way the crowd would react. They were learning it and getting into it and starting to understand it more. So it was interesting to be a part of that early evolution of mixed martial arts in India.
Right. And, do you have any instance that just stands out when you were in India? Any particular moment that kind of made you realize that, this is what India is? Perhaps the culture, perhaps any instance that just, made the trip special for you? I've
traveled a lot. I've traveled all over the world. In India, it feels very, very different, very much its own place. Like some places feel kind of more westernized or remind you a bit of the U.S. and India feels really, really unique. Even I remember the drive. The first time I went there, we flew into New Delhi and then got in a cab and drove to Chandigarh, which was like a 5-hour death-defying drive. The way the traffic goes absolutely nuts. And, you know, we'll be like a family of 5 on a scooter and then a truck and then a car racing in and out and then like animals pulling a cart like all on the freeway going crazy and you just like, I'm never going to make it. I'm not going to get to my flight. But I got to drive, you know, that trip to the countryside. You can see so much of India, and then spend time in Chandigarh, and then the second time I got to see Mumbai and get taken around Mumbai and see Bollywood. It's just such a huge, diverse country. I'd love to actually go back and see the Northeast. I think it's quite a bit different than the parts I've seen.
All right. And, you know, just to again touch upon your upcoming fight, did Scott Coker or anyone else, you know, come and tell you that you have a specific opponent or they have someone specific in mind, or that, you know, you're just going to fight on the card and they're going to find an opponent for you? Did you know, anyone from Bellator approach you and say, this is what it is, this is the update on the fight?
No, Moose is just injured, so I know they're going to give me an opponent soon, but I don't know who it is yet. I don't know that they have someone yet.
All right. So finally, Colleen, do you have any message for the Indian fans who would be watching you fight at Bellator 170?
Yeah, I mean, India was a huge part of my growth and development in my career in MMA, and I absolutely enjoyed the opportunity to fight over there. So I hope the fans that had the chance to watch me then will stay tuned and watch Bellator and enjoy what Bellator has going on in women's MMA now. And the card as a whole, it's just going to be a great card, so it'll be a lot of fun.
All right, fantastic. Thank you once again for taking the time out to talk to us, Colleen. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Akhilesh. Have a good day.
You too. All the very best.
Hello and welcome to the MMA India Show with me, Praveen Dabas, and Akhilesh Ganavarapu. Good morning, Akhilesh.
Good morning to you.
So, I think we both sacrifice a lot for this show because we wake up early or we're doing interviews in the night. You know, today we woke up at, 6 is not so early. I think sometimes I've woken up even earlier to go for a cycle ride or something. But sometimes we do interviews in the middle of the night. I think this night, we're supposed to be doing an interview, a Skype interview with Valentina Shevchenko, who's scheduled to fight Juliana Pena next weekend. We've already done an interview with her. Akhilesh spoke to her, but that was audio. And this time, you should hopefully see her in her personal glory. You know, I think she's one of those fighters who's so different. She looks so different outside of the cage. I mean, she's beautiful, she's gorgeous, she's glamorous, and inside she's just got this killer persona. You know, you look at her name Bullet is really right for she just really like pulls the trigger. I still remember in that fight against Holly Holm, she was so patient throughout, right? Just knowing. It was like how the tables turned. All of a sudden, she became the counterattack artist. Anyway, we'll talk about that with herself. Today, we are going to do a post-fight review of UFC Fight Night Phoenix. This was Fight Night, 101 or what was it?
103.
103. UFC Fight Night 103 Phoenix. And we are going to start with the Joe Lawson, Marcin. Is it Marcin or Marcinhel?
Marcinhel.
The Polish fighter who was fighting his second fight in the UFC. His first fight, he lost to a resurgent Diego Sanchez. So he was just on the wrong side of a refueled Diego Sanchez. So unlucky him. Here, of course, he showed got to show his skills a lot better. Now, of course, there was a lot of controversy regarding the fight. Personally, I'll tell you my view. Of course, the first round was very strong for Joe Lozon. He almost knocked him out. The second and third round, of course, was a lot of it on the ground, clinches. I didn't see it as strongly favoring Marcin Held as a lot of people have said, especially Joe Lawson himself. And it's hard, I think, for a fighter to judge his own fight without seeing it sometimes, because sometimes you're not really analyzing it as you go along. Because I still felt when he was getting up, he was the one still pushing the pace. He was the one still, moving forward. And he was never in such trouble, even when he was on the ground. Of course, Marcin Held was turning him around in the clinches at will. His takedowns were great. He was controlling. But you know what I'm saying? He was able to get out of those positions and was never really threatened with any time really being choked out or an armbar or anything. Which would warrant. So I saw those rounds kind of even, rather than so favoring Marcin that it would be like, oh, he got robbed or something. So for me, it wasn't really a robbery. It was more like second and third rounds were kind of even, and he won the first round very, very clearly.
Yeah. So, we even discussed it during a preview where we said the main difference would be Held's grappling, where he has the ability to turn Lozon's aggression against him. So that's exactly what we saw during the second and the third round. Yes, as we all expected, Lozon started aggressively, started throwing a lot of combinations, heavy volume as a striker. But the moment Held took him to the ground, it was completely Held's domain. But there are two things that played a major factor in this. One is the difference in how the judges see the performance of a fighter. For long, we have talked about judges taking aggression into consideration, taking cage control, taking control time on the ground into consideration. But now what has happened is, while before the control time used to be a big factor, now what has happened is it has fallen down the pecking order, where unless you do something drastic, you take advantage of the control time on the ground, it doesn't have as heavy of a factor to play in the decision by the judges, which it had previously. So now what is happening is, with the changing of the rules, what the judges have done is, unless, yes, control time is also a factor that they take into consideration, but unless you throw something decisive, you stay active while you're still in control, unless you do that, it doesn't have that big of a factor to play in the decision of the judges. And that is why I think a lot of fighters were even giving support to Marcin Held over someone like Joe Lozon. And that is why I think even Lozon, who was controlled on the ground, but Held did not throw in a lot of submissions, he did not throw in a lot of transitions, you did not see him actively going for those submissions that is known
He was
for.
just trying to maintain his dominant position rather than he wasn't able to go, like we said, for some kind of a submission.
Yes, so he was in control, yes, but he wasn't active.
Yeah.
Either when he was in Lozon's guard on the top position, or when he got his back, or wherever it was on the ground. Although he did have Lozon in a lot of trouble, he had complete control and dominance on the ground. He did not stay active, which is why I think that the judges saw it otherwise. Otherwise, second and third round, obviously, they should have given it to Marcin Held. But the fact that he wasn't active, he wasn't looking for a finish, played a big factor in how the judges saw the fight play out in the second and third rounds.
Yeah. So not as much of a robbery, and I think Joe Lozon was being a bit too generous. I think he's a great guy. He seemed like such a classy guy, but like we said, it's hard for him to analyze the fight being on the inside. Of course, being on the bottom position, and with Marcin Held on top, he probably felt, that
There's
Morrison was, and he was able to control the clinches. He probably felt he was a lot more dominant than it seemed to be to the judges.
that is a primary reason. The other reason I think is because, as he mentioned, he felt that he won the fight against Miller the last time around. So so he said he thought he got robbed the last time, and this time around he thought he lost. So again,
but I mean, not to say, it shouldn't be like that. You should, but that's the fight game. It doesn't. The judges see it differently sometimes.
Yeah, so as a fighter, obviously you have certain ideas as to how the fight played out. And Lozon, is a class act. He's always honest. He said, what, I thought I won the last fight, but this time around I thought I lost. And I even thought that last time, that he won against Miller, but this time around, as we discussed, Hell did not do enough while he was in control. So, aggression right now takes more priority, the top priority over anything else. And Joe Lozon was always aggressive, as his style is. Stylistically, he's a very aggressive fighter. He's a volume puncher. He throws heavy hands. He throws a lot of volume as a striker. And also, when he goes for grappling, when he tries to change levels, go and take the opponent to the ground, he's always aggressive. And that is when we also said that might work against him, against a really, really good grappler such as Marcin Held. So, as a fighter, you can understand where he's coming from, because he still had that in him where he thought he won the last fight. And this time around, he thought he lost, but then he won. So, as a fighter, you may say the judges aren't getting it right, maybe. So maybe that was his perspective.
Yeah. But the judges always see it from their own point. They're outside there. They're looking in. So, that's the job of the judges. What can you do? That's how the cookie crumbles sometimes.
The other thing is the disparity in the scorecards. For example, I think even in this fight, someone gave Joe Lozon 30-27, I think, while the other scored it 29-28. How would you give the fight 30-27 to Joe Lozon? So he has, and we've already seen certain decisions which were iffy, where we all thought the other fighter won, but judges thought the other fighter won. So there have been instances. There is a precedence to all of this. This time around, maybe I think Joe Lozon was a bit too hard on himself.
Yeah, I think he was a bit too hard on himself. Now, moving to the main fight of the night, BJ Penn's return against Yair Rodriguez, the Mexican fighter. Having seen that fight, it's kind of unfortunate that BJ Penn, I mean, I'll say one thing. I have a lot of respect for his chin. Some of those kicks that Yair gave in the first round would have put anybody down. But he just seemed to shake it off and just keep continuing. But it was really, I think, such a clear fight against somebody from the old school versus somebody from the new. You could see that BJ Penn's tactics were very old school, and even his fighting style, as compared to like a Yair, or let's say a Cub Swanson or a Tony Ferguson, guys who are always trying to mix it up, But here, what BJ Penn was trying to do was, has been seen many times, and it failed against somebody like a Yair, who was able to, kick at will. His kicking was phenomenal. I thought amazing kicking. He displayed such an all-round game of kicking, and like I said, they were all more or less on point. And it's surprising how BJ Penn kept standing. Some of them went through his defenses, and he stumbled, but he still kept fighting. So there's a reason he's never been knocked down in the UFC so far.
The fight tells a lot about BJ Penn's chin. You talk about Nate Diaz's chin. You talk about all these people who have granite chin. You talk about even Nick Diaz, for example. But people have forgotten how good of a chin BJ Penn has, or BJ Penn had. But yeah, I mean, we even discussed this. We even discussed going into the fight that it eventually will boil down to BJ Penn's adaptability to how the game has changed, to how BJ Penn could get inside the guard, get inside the pockets in the range, and then take Yair Rodriguez down and use his grappling. Maybe we all thought Yair's grappling was very underrated. We did not see him getting tested the way BJ Penn usually does to his opponents. So there were interesting dynamics going into the fight, but so there are two things. One, Joe Rogan very rightly said one thing after the first round. He said he never remembered BJ Penn coming back in a fight.
I remember that. Yeah. So all of a sudden, BJ Penn was moving forward, pressing, and then all of a sudden, after a couple of kicks, he was like backing up, and he wasn't able to play his usual game or take it to the ground because Yair didn't allow it. His kick always made sure BJ Penn kept that distance. There was, I think, only once or twice in the fight that there was clinches against the fence. Otherwise, Yair kept it on the ground, on his feet all the time.
Right, and the other very interesting thing is BJ Penn in his career has never faced any fighter whose style is so heavily reliant on his kicks.
Yeah.
So yes, he has faced someone like Lyoto Machida, for example. But Lyoto Machida, as elusive as he is, as big of a karate background as he has, isn't so heavily reliant on his kicks as say, for example, Yair Rodriguez or someone like, for example, even Tony Ferguson, who relies very heavily on his kicks. But even more than Tony or anyone else in the UFC, I think Yair Rodriguez has a very, very kick-heavy reliant style in how he proceeds in his fight. So the interesting thing was it was to see how BJ Penn could negate that distance advantage that Yair possesses because he has that heavy kick reliant style, and BJ could not do that. Now BJ is known for his boxing. He's probably one of the most technical boxers in the sport of mixed martial arts. But in order to take advantage of that boxing, he has to get inside the range. And someone like Yair Rodriguez, who is so heavily reliant on his kicks, can always keep that distance.
Yeah.
He never let, and if you watch the fight, he never let BJ close that distance. He always maintained that.
There was only once when BJ was able to half kind of catch a kick and take it to the fence and close that distance. But otherwise, the kicks always kept him at a distance or backing up.
Right. So, that is what, and, as you said, the sport has evolved so much. It's not something against BJ Penn. BJ Penn might, maybe if we were back in 2010 or back in 2011, BJ Penn might have done relatively well. But just the manner in which the fighters have evolved.
Just in the last 2 years, since BJ Penn has retired, the fight has evolved so much that he's not been able to keep up with it.
Yeah, and you see different styles now. For example, look at Dominic Cruz. His evolution as a fighter back when he was, a really, really good fighter in 2011 and 12. Look at where he is now. He's much better. His movement is phenomenal. His elusivity is phenomenal. He is just getting better with age, and that is because of primarily how the sport has evolved, how the coaches have evolved, and how the training camps have evolved. Now, I do not know how Jackson Wink trained BJ, because this time around for this fight he did not train extensively with Greg Jackson. Maybe that would have been different, but we can never say because as we said, Yair Rodriguez is a new breed kind of fighter. He just brings in a different dimension with his style, something that an old school fighter like BJ Penn might not have seen in his previous experiences. So yeah. The sad part was just to see how BJ was getting mauled without having any answer, and by the end of round 1, he just wanted the referee to stop the fight.
Now, coming to stopping the fight, I want to come to the actual stoppage. This is John McCarthy.
Yeah.
One of the best recognized names in referees. Now, talking about the stoppage, of course, we have said sometimes the fight should be stopped early and blah, blah, blah. We've talked about it in focus to India as well. This is a UFC fight with a legend in the game, BJ Penn, one of the best referees. Now, one can make an argument that fight should have been stopped a little earlier, because he was taking a lot of damage and not answering back. He was, of
Right.
course, still trying to defend himself, but he was trying be the word. He wasn't able to. He was not able to defend himself. I think there were quite a few, hits he got there. What do you think?
Right.
Do you think that was a late stoppage?
I do not think so, because let me tell you how, let me tell you why. Because if we talked about India, let's bring that up first. You see fighters, for example, in a fight in India, if they do not put their hands up, if they're just getting tagged even on the feet, and do not have any defensive answer to getting hit, you need to stop the fight, because they're not coherent anymore. They're just standing there, just taking hits. They are not getting their hands up.
Okay.
But if you see BJ's fight, he was getting tagged, yes, but he had his hands up. He was trying to defend. He was still answering. So what McCarthy does and what these referees do, these guys who are properly trained, is when you have a fighter getting tagged, you do not stand back and watch. You go near the fighter, you ask him if he's okay, if he and McCarthy or anyone else, Herb Dean, whoever it is, ask the fighter to either give them a thumbs up if they're okay, either ask them to say yes if they're okay, or give them any kind of indication if they want to stop the fight. But BJ was clearly saying, "I'm okay, I'm doing well," and he was trying to throw up his defensive guard. He was trying to protect himself with his hands.
But it was more like tak tak, I'm okay, tak tak tak, like just the fighter.
Yeah,
saying
so that is
I'm okay isn't enough. It should be up to the referee to judge.
So that is when John McCarthy stopped the fight. So McCarthy gave. So what these referees do is they give the fighter adequate time so that they can respond. And once they cannot do that, that is when they step in.
Of course, that is all in theory, and I get that. But it doesn't always work out that way, which is why there's so much debate on the fact of early stoppages, late stoppages sometimes. And sometimes, of course, everybody says it was stopped at the right time.
Yeah, it doesn't work if fighter's hands flail, right? So that is an indication that a fighter cannot coherently defend himself anymore, or is not all there
at
in
all.
The head.
Yeah, if he's not able to defend himself at all, like Ronda Rousey wasn't able to defend herself,
right?
Hands flailing, just getting hit, then it's fair enough. But it's hard to judge sometimes when the fighter is on the ground.
Yeah, but let's look at another example. John Lineker in his recent fight, he was getting tagged on the ground a lot, but then he was he kept looking at the referee. He kept assuring him that he was okay. He was getting hit with hard elbows. That is a very different issue. Getting tagged with punches is different. Getting hit in the face with an elbow is very different. But he was looking at the referee. He was telling him that he was okay, and by the end of the round, he was walking properly because So that is where it's a judgment call by the referee. If you're properly trained, you know how to see these signs. If the fighter is answering back coherently, if he's saying, no, I'm okay, and he's reassuring the referee and is doing something. So what the referees do is they ask the fighter to do something to show them that they're all right. And that's when, that the fighter either, responds by trying to fight back, trying to protect himself. So that's the meaning of being coherent when a fighter is getting tagged. So the referees watch for these signs. And the same thing happened with John McCarthy in the fight with BJ Penn. BJ Penn, he was keeping his hands up. He was trying to protect himself. But the moment John understood that BJ could not do that, he stepped in and stopped the fight. So I think it was a very good stoppage. I do not think that it was late.
Okay.
He gave BJ enough time to defend himself intelligently.
Or to show some kinds of a recovery.
Yeah, but once BJ could not do that, John stepped in.
Okay. Fair enough. Well, do you think BJ Penn is going to stay retired now? Because, of course, I think he should. With all due respect to him, he's a legend of the game. He's had his time. But the game of MMA, like we said, is evolving very quickly. And it's important, I feel, not to go out where everybody feels, listen, you should retire. and start feeling bad for somebody.
Yeah, and after the fight, even his coaches, one of his coaches said, maybe it's time for Penn to just hang up for good. He doesn't have anything to prove. Because when you see a legend like that coming back and get beaten up, it's time. It's high time.
It's not a good sight as well.
Sorry?
It's not a nice sight to see.
Yeah, yeah. You could see Twitter literally melting down because of how BJ Penn was just getting mauled. So Yeah, I mean, we've said it before. BJ Penn has nothing to prove. We say now BJ Penn has nothing to prove, and it's a call that even Dana White has to make, because and Dana White even said this was after Frankie Edgar's fight. Dana said, you know what, I think BJ Penn's time is done. He has nothing else to prove, and he came back 2 years later. He looked much worse than he was against Frankie. So I think it's just time for BJ to just hang up his boots and ride into the sunset.
Yeah. Cool. So having said that, let's move on to Bellator 170, which is coming up this Saturday.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, doesn't air in India yet, but we have been getting a lot of requests from fans to cover Bellator fights, so we have been covering some of the main fights. Our website, which is coming up, www.mmaindia.com, the site for MMA fans in India and soon all over the world, is coming to you and launching real soon. We are going to be covering, of course, apart from UFC, Bellator and Invicta, One Championship, some of the other fight promotions, depending on the fights, of course. A lot of new articles are going to be coming your way. A lot of cool stuff, a shop section. You can buy really cool MMA India stuff and a lot of other brands coming up. So a whole lot of stuff happening on the website, which is launching really soon, within a couple of days, in fact. We've all been working really hard trying to get the site up and running very soon. With Akhilesh has written a couple of really nice articles to read and think about. I'm not going to talk about them right now. You're going to have to wait for the website to come up. Now, coming to Bellator 170, you just heard before we started talking Colleen Schneider's interview with Akhilesh. Of course, she's also, well, I shouldn't say known as Josh Barnett's girlfriend, because none of them like that. I think any fighter hates being known as the along with the name of her. Of course, I'm sure they're very proud of dating, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
They want to be known as, okay, the fight, which is fair enough. She's had a long career. She's fought in a lot of different. What's very interesting about Colleen's career is she's fought in so many different kinds of promotions, including the Super Fight League in India. She's been to India. She's been. Wait, let me see. I've got it written here somewhere, I think.
3 fights plus FL, if I'm not wrong, in India.
Yes, and she was a champion here in that weight category.
Yeah.
Flyweight belt. Then anyway, I've not in the other things, but she has. Before this, she was in. Was she in Invicta before this?
Yeah.
Right, and she fought for the belt and lost.
Yeah. Now
Bellator, but she has fought all around the globe in different fighting championships, all kinds of her. So tell me, how was the conversation with her?
It was very interesting, because I wanted to talk to Colleen primarily because of her background and the fact that she's training with one of the best fighters in the world, who is Josh Barnett, and also about
Is she still training with him? I think in an interview, what did she tell you? She said she's still training with him.
I mean, she trains with him because he's a boyfriend. So
yeah, but I saw in another interview an interview of Josh's just before his last fight with Andrei Arlovsky, them saying that they used to train together,
right,
but not anymore.
She has changed camps. She said that during the interview.
Yeah.
But she used to train at least with Josh Barnett, in a gym, but. Just the fact that Josh Barnett is one of the best catch wrestlers in the world, and his extensive knowledge in catch wrestling and wrestling in general is so tremendously good, that I just wanted to talk to her about his influence, about how she kind of transitioned from a striking background to wrestling, and then making a transition to mixed martial arts, and also add to the fact that she also fought in India. She was in India for a very long time, so I also wanted to get her thoughts on that, and the fact that Bellator is now adding titles to different divisions. They have announced the featherweight title bout, similar to Invicta, in coming months. So Now, you have UFC having a featherweight title, you have Invicta having a featherweight interim title, you have Bellator now debuting their interim featherweight title. So I also wanted to talk to her about a title being added to her weight class as well. So it was a very interesting conversation. She was very candid about her experiences, about what she thought about her future in Bellator MMA, about her career as a whole. So it was very, very interesting. She said a lot of things that people did not know. One of the things was, of course, she told us that a fight with Rebecca Ruth was cancelled because Rebecca was injured.
Did
Now
she
I
say
haven't
the fight is cancelled, or did she say Rebecca is injured and is going to be replaced?
She said she's going to be replaced. She said Scott Coker is looking for replacements and that he would find someone else for her to fight this weekend.
But
But
as of today, nobody's been announced yet.
no, so
Neither
that
has
is
it officially come out that Rebecca is injured, apart from
yeah,
Colleen telling you, which
yeah,
is of course almost as good as the horse's mouth, though not from the horse's mouth, but it's not come out. So it's a bit of a strange situation, no?
it is. So I do not know what to make of this. I mean, will Rebecca fight injured? Is she really injured? What is happening with the fight itself? We do not know. So, but that is just one fight on the prelims. You have a phenomenal Bellator 170. They have come out with great guns to put on some phenomenal fights. You have Paul Daly fighting Brendan Ward. You have Georgi Karakanyan fighting on the card. You have Campos fighting Anderson. It's just a phenomenal card. You talk about UFC putting on stacked cards. This is probably the stacked card in Bellator of the year.
Yeah, and especially because it's one of the most hyped. Now, getting to the main fight, of course, coming to the main fight, because I think our viewers will have heard your interview with Colleen and gotten a lot of information from that. Coming to the main fight, which is Tito Ortiz versus Chael Sonnen, this is one of the biggest hype fights, you can say, in Bellator because of these two guys who are, well, at least Tito is a legend of the game. Chael, I think some people feel a little hesitant calling him a legend because of various extreme feelings for him, though he has, of course, fought some of the best, like Anderson Silva, John Jones. Anderson Silva, of course, the first fight came close to finishing him, but of course, a checkered history as far as it should be. Was he tested for a PD or a steroid the last time? When he's just come back from his
TRT, testosterone.
So he has had a checkered history with that, along with a lot of other people before USADA came in. Has come back now. I don't know if you saw the promo. There was a recent promo based largely on Chael. It was really an emotional, and we got to see a different side of Sonnen in that. Really emotional side. He was talking about his father, and he was talking about how he had promised his father that he would win the world championship by beating Tito Ortiz. And that was one of the things he was never able to fulfill. And his father liked Tito Ortiz. His father was a fan of his. So Chael didn't understand the kind of hatred towards him coming from like a Tito, where he felt he was misconstrued, and he actually looks up to Tito and has always looked up to him.
Yeah. So Chael would, if you talk about the biggest hype men in the sport of mixed martial arts, and I mean it in a good way. I mean, in fighters can hype their fights.
Yeah.
There are only two people that can do that.
And one would perhaps say that he's built his career on that.
Yeah, but okay, so let's put it this way. If there was no Don King, boxing wouldn't be as famous.
Yeah.
If there was no Chael Sonnen, MMA wouldn't be as famous.
He's the original, like he likes to call himself, the American gangster.
Yeah, so even before Conor McGregor entered the sport, even before he put on his gloves, it was Chael Sonnen who was doing the promotion, as one of the biggest hype men in the sport. So, if you're a fighter and have fought some of the biggest names, including, as you said, Anderson Silva's and John Jones, of course you're a legend. There are no two ways about it. Yes, you talk about TRTs. A lot of people were on TRTs. Anderson Silva got busted for PEDs. Does that make him any less of a legend? It doesn't. So Same thing can be said about Chael Sonnen, same thing can be said about Vitor Belfort. All of these people who are legends of the sport. And you said, this is one of the biggest fights in Bellator. I think this is one of the biggest fights in the sport of mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
Solely because it was 20 years in the making. It is between two of the biggest names in the sport of mixed martial arts. When MMA, I remember being a fan of WWE and MMA back in 1990s, 97, 98. And one of the biggest reasons for that happening was because of Tito Ortiz. The moment he fought Ken Shamrock in 99 and afterwards, and there was this big rivalry that just brought the sport of mixed martial arts onto the mainstream scene. That was when even I was interested in watching what was going on. So Tito Ortiz, you can say, was one of the very first legends in the sport. And Chael Sonnen, of course, after that, built a reputation as one of the biggest hype men in the sport, as one of the greatest trash talkers in the sport. So, it's a fight that is 20 years in the making. And also, as you said, there was a video where Chael Sonnen talked about wrestling Tito Ortiz in varsity, in university, when they were, in high school teams.
And he beat him.
Yeah, Chael beat Tito Ortiz.
Yeah.
And, he always wanted, and he said that is why he even transitioned to mixed martial arts, because his father was a big fan of Tito, and seeing how Tito was doing so well in UFC and in MMA, Chael Sonnen wanted to get into the sport. I think that is all hype. I generally think Chael Sonnen can and say whatever it takes to just sell his fights, and that's what makes him one of the greatest, most entertaining fighters of all time. I think this might not be. This will let's be very honest now. This will not be a technical masterclass.
Yeah.
You won't see Chael Sonnen being the greatest grappler, putting Tito Ortiz in predicaments, while Tito Ortiz, being the greatest strikers, will knock Chael Sonnen down. No, these fighters are well past their primes. But what makes it so much more interesting is just the history behind the fight, just the 20-year build-up that has gone in to making this fight happen. And also the fact that this is Tito Ortiz's last fight in MMA. He has announced his retirement after the fight, irrespective of what happens during the fight. So, not only are we seeing a fight that is 20 years in the making, we are seeing a fight where one of the greatest fighters of all time is calling it quits. You talk about BJ Penn's retirement fight, you talk about when the time comes, Anderson Silva's retirement fight, you talk about Ken Shamrock's retirement fight. This is the swan song of Tito Ortiz, one of the greatest fighters on the planet. So I
think we've lost Akhilesh again, so we will take a quick break. लगता है बिजली दोबारा चली गई है हैदराबाद में बिजली साली हैदराबाद में जाती रहती है. Akhilesh, of course, lives in Hyderabad. We'll just be back. Hello, and you're back with the MMA India Show, and me and Akhilesh. I've changed my clothes. I've been for some meetings because Hyderabad की बिजली ऐसी है 4-5 घंटे के लिए गई तो गई. So I've done all kinds of stuff since the morning till Akhilesh's bijli came back. So, that's why I've changed clothes. I don't know if Akhilesh has changed his clothes or not. He looks the same. So where were we? We were talking about Chael and Tito, of course. And we were quite deep into the conversation.
Yeah.
We were almost, I think, at the end of the conversation when the light went. So I think you were talking about Tito then, right?
Yeah. It was just about how this fight itself was 20 years in the making and how important it is, especially considering this is Tito Ortiz's final fight and how big of a part he played in the development and evolution of mixed martial arts as a sport. So, looking at Tito Ortiz, where he was the Huntington Beach bad boy, the original gangster sort of persona or aura that he had, the way he brought down the downfall of Ken Shamrock, it was a phenomenal period that Tito made a name for himself, and that was when Chael Sonnen was sitting on the sidelines watching Tito Ortiz, planning to ply his trade in mixed martial arts. So this is a very interesting fight, one of the biggest fights, if you ask me, in the history of mixed martial arts. And just the personalities that are going to go head to head, it's going to be a phenomenal event.
Yeah. Tito's had an amazing career, of course. he has also been associated as a manager with a lot of people as well, including Chris Cyborg.
Yeah.
So he's also had run-ins with Dana White. So he's had quite a colorful and checkered career.
Yeah, that's a mild way to put things. He had a couple of run-ins with Dana White.
Political correct.
Yeah. So Dana at some points even said he would never let Tito fight in the UFC again, but Tito fought in the UFC again. So one of the biggest personalities, one of the biggest athletes in the sport. So it's going to be a phenomenal fight come this weekend.
Yeah, it is. So who do you have your money on? I have my money on Tito.
Oh no, Chael Sonnen every day.
Oh yeah,
any day.
You think so?
With Chael Sonnen.
Okay.
Yeah, because Tito, as I said, he was one of the dangerous fighters in his prime. He could knock anyone out, but he's very well past his prime. Even Chael Sonnen as well.
Are you saying Chael Sonnen is in his prime?
No, so the only thing is Chael Sonnen at least was active a couple of years ago. Until he got busted in the UFC, we were still active. Tito hasn't fought any big name opponents. Chael, at least 5 years ago or 4 years ago, fought John Bone Jones and Anderson Silvers of the world. So I just by that logic, I have to give it to Chael Sonnen.
Okay, fair enough. Do you want to wager a bet on that?
Maybe not in the open, no.
We'll do that offline. So there you have it. We look forward to. We've just finished with UFC Fight Night 103 Phoenix. Invicta. We wanted to talk about Megan Anderson's win also over Charmaine Tweet, right? A very. She was pretty dominating, especially I think it was the second round in which she finally, the referee stopped the fight. Both of them huge girls. Charmaine Tweed, of course, has fought in India before, but we don't want to go into that chapter right now. So she's fought in India before. Megan Anderson, Australian girl, fighting out of America now. She's had, I think this was her fourth or fifth win in a row.
Fifth, I think.
Fifth, fourth or fifth.
She's had last loss was against Cindy Dandois, and that was in 2015.
Yeah.
So probably fourth.
So she's had a good run now, and she's had some. She's very good with her hands.
Yeah.
Very strong. And she has now called out. I mean, she made a mess out of Charmaine Tweed in the second round.
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty hard to look at. But we have iron stomachs, then we look at MMA every day. So she called out, the interesting thing is she called out Dana White to tell, kind of through the message, is she wants to fight the winner of Holly Holm and Jermaine Randam. So, of course, we did, like they say, हमने थोड़ा आग लगाने के लिए पोस्ट और ट्वीट किया कि आपने क्रिस साइबोर का नाम क्यों नहीं लिया, आप उसको अवॉइड कर रहे हैं क्या, वो थोड़ा क्या कहते हैं उंगली करने के लिए, बट and Chris Cyborg retweeted that, by the way, and it became a big thing on her and our Twitter lines, so to speak. But of course, because Chris Cyborg is the featherweight champion right now in Invicta, current. She's become the interim featherweight champion. So shouldn't she first fight Cyborg to unify that belt, so to speak, before she asks for the UFC winner?
No, because Cyborg is currently signed to UFC. She's not signed to Invicta anymore. Although she's still the Invicta FC featherweight champion per se.
Let's say she's calling out in the UFC. Shouldn't she, let's say, have to go through Chris Cyborg first? Not saying that Chris will accept that fight. But do you think it's fair that she just asks? I mean, of course, she's going to ask for what she wants to ask. She's got this conversation going. Good going for her. That she's made that call out and she's, got the attention on herself.
Yeah. So, the thing is, no one knows when Chris would fight next. That's the biggest talking point. So even when we talked to Chris Cyborg, we asked, if USADA has gone back about the timeline as to which she would be sidelined or anything like that. And she said no. Even her doctors are talking to USADA at the moment, so that is not resolved. So,
It makes no
they
sense. You're saying it makes no sense since we don't know when Chris is going to fight.
Yeah, there's a scenario that can realistically see Chris Cyborg being sidelined for the rest of 2017 if USADA imposes a ban on her.
Yeah.
So effectively for the end of till the end of 2017, you might not see Chris Cyborg fighting again in the UFC. So it doesn't make sense for Megan Anderson to call Chris Cyborg out. So she did, I think, the most sensible thing, which is to call the winner of Holly and Jermaine. So
I think Amanda might have something to say to that.
Yeah, Amanda is, she's the bantamweight champion. She wanted to be a two division champion, just like what Conor McGregor did. But realistically, I do not see Amanda moving up. I do see her moving up if she beats either, the winner of Pena and Shevchenko. If she does that, then, there are very, very few other fighters that are in the division that can realistically be a challenge for Amanda Nunes after beating Ronda Rousey. So then I can see UFC going for a super fight between the bantamweight champion and the featherweight champion, but that can be, that can take a long time. So, and Megan Anderson, since she, started fighting 4 or 5 years ago, she has changed tremendously. Just, talking physically itself, she packed on a lot of muscle, on the top. Her shoulders have broadened. She has trained very well. I think her kickboxing, her stand-up game has been amazing. A fight with Charmaine Reed proved that, when it comes to the stand-up affair, very few can actually stop Megan Anderson. And that was where Cindy Dandois, for example, was at the advantage or did the best thing possible. So I think it was a decent attempt by Megan Anderson, at least, to call her the winner of
to get her
Holly
in the mix, to get her name put in the mix at least.
Yeah, it puts your name in the mix, and there is, as I said, we talked about Cindy Dandois, and I realistically think Cindy Dandois needs to be called up to the UFC as well if they're starting a featherweight division. I see UFC doing this. I see UFC making a fight between Megan and Cindy on the UFC and the winner fighting the winner of Holly and Jermaine. So probably that can be what UFC has in store.
Fair enough, especially since Cindy is the last woman to defeat Megan.
Yeah.
Though, I was really surprised. I find Cindy's very awkward to look at, in no disrespect meant, but, she doesn't really look like she can win. When I started seeing that fight, I really thought Megan was going to pull her apart, but she has a very solid game. She knows what she's doing,
Yeah,
so
she's
anyway,
very scrappy.
Yeah, sorry.
Similar to, because she is good friends with Misha Tate. Misha Tate has trained or helped Cindy Dandois, so she has learned a lot from Misha. So, she's very, very scrappy.
There you go. So having said that, we may be talking to Megan Anderson tomorrow night. We have been trying to talk to her with the week leading up to Invicta FC 21, but we weren't able to. So let's see, hopefully over the next day or two, maybe, we may get the chance to speak to her, and we will bring that interview to you then very soon, if it happens. Till then, signing off. We will come back to you very soon with a post review of Bellator 170, Tito versus Chael Sonnen. Let's see who wins the bet. Akhilesh or Parveen. Thank you, Akhilesh. Goodbye, everybody.